All right, Saagar, what's on your radar?
Well, from the beginning of this pandemic, the memo to news organizations went out. Blue state governors who are, quote, following the science must be protected at all costs. Their failures covered up, and in some cases, sexual harassment ignored. Red state governors who don't follow the science must be targeted. They are murderers, after all. Any and every accusation against them must be elevated to the highest level. This is what happened in the case of Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, who has a particular way of driving the media and many center-left liberals completely crazy. So it was in the early months of the pandemic when newly fired Rebecca Jones came forward with a remarkable tale that nearly all of the mainstream media perked up and they started writing. Jones' claims goes like this. She was fired in the early months of the pandemic because she refused to manipulate raw Florida coronavirus data so that the state's response would look better. She heroically stood up to her authorities, and then she was fired for it. She then came forward as a quote-unquote whistleblower, leading to the widely repeated claim in the national media that Ron DeSantis had been caught manipulating coronavirus data in Florida. There's just one problem. Nearly a year after Jones has come forward, not a single thing that she said has turned out to be true. In the meantime, she's inspired cable news segments. She's raised hundreds of thousands of dollars through GoFundMe. She created a bizarre alternative Florida coronavirus tracking system in order to continue peddling lies about how the Sunshine State is handling the pandemic. First is the case of Jones's firing. Charlie Cook of National Review, he summarizes as basically she was a problematic employee who broke the rules and unwittingly released some people's personal data. Then she literally crashed a public health dashboard in the middle of the pandemic. Crashing was done by incompetence, and when she realized what was happening, that she was about to be fired, she sent a mass email to the entire department saying that she was doing so because she refused to manipulate coronavirus data, which of course was then reported on widely by the media. Now, her central claim is that she was asked by the Florida Deputy Secretary of Health to delete cases and deaths from their database and manually alter figures. An astounding claim, something akin to almost what Cuomo's staff did. But I digress. And as time went on, Jones continued to magnify her story about altering all kinds of coronavirus figures. And yet, as Charlie Cook points out, she literally did not even have the ability to edit raw data. Her job was too junior to even allow her such privileges. The closest that she came was, quote, instead, each day she was given a copy of data, charged with uploading it into the system in a manner determined by the epidemiological team. When the prominent epidemiologist spoke out against Jones, debunking her claims about widespread manipulation, her response was not data and facts. Instead, she used the age-old accusation that it was, quote, sexist and racist. Sound familiar? Then she literally created an enemies list, which I assume I will be now on. I'm honored to join them. And her profile multiplied exponentially in December when police raided her home. The New York Times blared, a state scientist questioned Florida's virus data. Now her home's been raided. A subhead says, quote, Rebecca Jones became an unlikely celebrity when she lost her job running the state's coronavirus data dashboard. And yet, what actually happened, it turns out that the IP address, which happens to be assigned to her house, had actually breached Florida's Department of Health and the personal information of 19,000 employees stolen. So Charlie Cook of National Review has done the definitive piece on this, which I'm borrowing from heavily here. But I wanted to lay it out for you so that you can see with your own eyes how you can lie with impunity in the public. But as long as you're lying about the right person, you'll be rewarded. Rebecca Jones was literally named Forbes Technology Person of the Year for standing up and filling the role of the government. CNN's Chris Cuomo had her on his show in May 2020, while his brother was literally in the process of executing a decision which would kill elderly people in nursing homes. Take a listen.
What exactly were you asked to do that was so unusual and improper and, in your opinion, wrong?
Well, the first time I was asked to do something improper was in April. And when I brought basically what the results of whether or not each county could open to superiors, they essentially told me they did not like the results.
How so? What does that mean they didn't like? Help us understand.
The results didn't match the report for reopening that had already been written, basically saying that a lot of rural counties, because of a wide range of reasons, didn't meet the criteria that the state had outlined in order to qualify for reopening, whereas some more populated counties did meet that criteria. And I was told that specifically, and this is a quote, "We can't tell Jackson and Franklin County that they can't reopen, but Broward and Miami-Dade can."
So also don't forget Lawrence O'Donnell at MSNBC.
Rebecca Jones built Florida's coronavirus data web portal, but she was fired on May 18th after refusing to manipulate data to make it seem as if certain Florida counties had met the criteria to reopen.
I will stop there. CBS News also did an entire package. But what's remarkable in retrospect is the flagrancy which they allow accusations allow on their air. How little investigation they do into whether any of these accusations are even true, while ignoring other governors who actually were responsible for deaths in their states and actually did manipulate data to improve their public positioning. It is a disgraceful tale, and as we reopen, we should remember who exactly these people are, because there will be another crisis and the lies will abound again. I just think it's astounding, Crystal, that this person was held up as a whistleblower, as, I mean, it was a commonplace accusation. DeSantis had cooked the books in order to make his state look better than not, and she was always held up. She had her alternative tracker. This became like a whole resistance liberal type thing online. It was completely fake. The entire thing, the entire accusation, false. And yet, she was all over their air. She raised all of this money, became a celebrity online. And it would now in retrospect, every single one of these things has turned out to be completely false. While Chris Cuomo's own brother, was actually cooking the books in his own home state and screwing up the response. I think that's the craziest part about the entire thing.
I just was looking at Cosmo did this gross,
that's right. I didn't even put that in there.
Profile photo shoot. Yeah. I mean, she really was held up as a hero. And look, I'm not saying that her claims didn't deserve investigation.
Of course they did.
Somebody in that office sending an email like that to everyone saying I've been I've been fired for because I won't cook the books. Yeah, look into it. But it shouldn't be that hard to figure out that she was at such a junior level that she wasn't even in a position to cook the books if she wanted to. So all that we're asking is that you actually investigate these claims instead of just taking one person at her word and running with it and turning her into some resistance hero and using it in this political war against Ron DeSantis, who I understand why Democrats are nervous about him. He's very popular with the Republican base. He's managed to sort of escape some of the worst stench of Stop the Steal and all of that stuff. So I do think he'll be a formidable candidate.
And he's got a 55% approval rating.
In obviously a key swing state. But this is one of those stories that you got to be skeptical when it just fits the framing a little too perfectly. Yeah. And that was one of these. They didn't want to think about it critically because it confirmed their priors. They believed that the numbers should look a certain way in Florida. Those numbers weren't looking a certain way in Florida. They believed that Ron DeSantis would behave in a certain way. And so when she came in to fulfill that narrative for them, there were no questions asked. And the bottom line is, if you're worried about Ron DeSantis, stories like this do nothing but help him. You're just giving him more power, just like that 60 Minutes report that you dug into.
He dined off that for 2 weeks.
I mean, he's still going to be able to point to that. And look, fake news, they're out to get me, I'm under assault,
it's
all
true.
That stuff. And so you're just handing him more power. You're handing him more popularity. Congratulations, guys.
No, it's true. And look, I was down in Florida, and it's completely fine down there. And you can hate it if you want. You're welcome not to go visit if you don't want to. I think that's the part which I think really drives people crazy, which is that seeing and turning these people into these villains while ignoring many of the people who are their own governors or people who are they're politically aligned with. Gavin Newsom, I just saw today, California is not going to be removing their mask mandate in contradictions of CDC guidance around indoor masking. Despite the fact the CDC already changed their guidelines, they're going to hang on for another a month or so. Look, they are welcome to do so, but I think that decision should deserve a lot of scrutiny whenever it comes to their citizens. Same thing with Andrew Cuomo. We're talking later in the show about $5 million that he's been paid for that book, and a very competitive rate. If you go and you look at exactly how many books that have been sold, it's been a dismal failure. Very interesting how you get to pocket a nice little cash deal like that. All of these things completely ignored by these same networks and elevating people like Rebecca Jones, who have been promoting outright falsehoods. That's the disgraceful part.
I think now that we know a little bit more, too, it makes sense why Florida's numbers didn't spike the way that was expected, because there's been very little outdoor transmission. So in a state like Florida, where people can be outside.
It's also hot.
It's hot. You've got lots of outdoor dining. People can be, outdoors together. And that really led to very little transmission outside of a few cases in very crowded circumstances. You start to understand why the numbers didn't end up in the place where a lot of people actually predicted they would be.
Yeah, that's right. All right, I'm looking forward to your radar next, Crystal.